It's time for our big story. This week, Kathy and I discuss the confusion that remains after questions were asked about Bywater in the House of Assembly, which left more questions than answers. The big story this week, Bywater confusion, as Communications and Works Minister Mark Vanterpool disclosed in the House of Assembly on Thursday that the government has not sanctioned any sale of Bywater. No, Kathy. Bywater, based on information that has come out publicly before, is now known as Seven Seas Water. But the opposition member, Julian Fraser, sought to get some answers on that sale, and in particular, whether the government has had any role to play in that purported sale. And this is what Minister Vanterpool's response was to that query.
I stand to be corrected, but I don't know that I've said that Bywater has not been sold. I said that the government has not agreed at this point, up to this point, to the sale. Any legal questions like that, I am not in a position to answer. But I know that I did not say that Bywater was not sold.
So, Kathy, there you have it. The mystery coming out of Parliament this week, which has left quite a few persons scratching their heads as to, so what exactly is the legal status of Bywater or Seven Seas in relation to Bywater and Bywater in relation to Seven Seas, and has the government played any role in this whatsoever if the government is saying that it hasn't sanctioned the sale?
Well, the thing is, I can recall back in 2015, it was that the Premier, during a press conference, was asked about this very sale arrangement. He did say that they were engaged in discussions with a company themselves, that company and the Bywater as it relates to selling the company. He declined exactly to name the company at that time. Ever since then, we haven't heard the government declaring that Bywater was sold. But what we did see was a statement from the Bywater parent company saying that they are now the owners of Bywater BVI, and there it laid.
And that company, Seven Seas, which purportedly bought Bywater, is owned by Accra Ventures Holding, which in turn is owned by billionaire Richard Branson. And they disclosed back in about August of 2015 that they were the new owners of Bywater. So the question continues to be, what, if anything, does the government know about this transaction, and has it played any role whatsoever? Because another question that pops up coming out of this discourse in the House recently is, if indeed Bywater has been sold to Seven Seas, then how legally binding is that sale if, as Mr. Fraser has stated, the sale can only take place if the government sanctions it?
Yeah, and Minister Vanterpool is saying the government did not sanction. We didn't hear from the Premier at any point saying that
the Premier actually wasn't in the House.
Oh, yes.
This session.
Yeah, but in any forum where this issue came up, there was no way that the government said they sanctioned, apart from what I mentioned before, the Premier saying that they had some discussions as it relates to sale. So we don't know if there is any legal implications as it is. That was under debate all the time, that opposition member Fraser is now trying to pull out for the people to see. That is the big question.
Yes, indeed. And another big question, the tale of the two Bywaters, as was disclosed by Mr. Fraser, which the minister couldn't quite answer because he himself had to admit that one of those companies he isn't aware of. There is Bywater BVI and there is Bywater Holdings. And so Mr. Fraser also sought to get answers on why were these two companies created, what was their function, and this is the exchange that took place in the House of Assembly regarding that matter.
if the agreement was with Bywater SA, how is it that Bywater BVI is a company that's in discussions, negotiations, or the ones that they're trying to buy the company from? Where did Bywater BVI come in?
Since 2012, I believe, or 2013, we've been dealing with Bywater BVI Limited.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I agree that Bywater BVI Limited, yes, was a company established for the sole purpose of constructing the water plant at Paraquita Bay. Bywater BVI Holding Limited, however, I submit that that company was established for the sole purpose of transferring the assets to Aqua, was it Seven Seas? And that's a question I want answered, to know when this company was established and why was it established. But the answers don't seem to be forthcoming, Madam Speaker.
And I'm not sure which company the member was referring to in the end. Like I said, we signed the agreement with Bywater SA, and along the lines, Bywater BVI Limited came into play. All of the agreements with the banks and the guarantors in the United Kingdom were between Bywater BVI Limited, and therefore this is the company that was dealing with. I don't know what arrangement, and we haven't accepted and finalized what arrangements may have been made, may or may not have been made with Bywater BVI Limited and the company that has proposed or has purchased it. So I cannot give the member an answer, as these matters are not completely settled. I wish I could, but I can't.
So Kathy, Bywater BVI, according to Mr. Fraser, created for the construction of the Paraquita Bay water plant, and Bywater Holdings supposedly created for the sale of Bywater to Seven Seas.
Mm-hmm. So what really is the point that Mr. Fraser is trying to get at? What is that answer that he's looking forward? Why is it that he is insisting on having a direct response from the government official to say, yes, it is sold, or yes, it is not sold?
And that is the very big question that we're still awaiting those answers, if the government has those answers. Hence why there is this new mystery surrounding this whole Bywater affair.
But the thing that is a little more complicated as well is that the government is using the name Seven Seas to do, because remember in the recent press conference that we had with the signing of the purchase agreement
MOU.
and the MOU, he announced, said Seven Seas bracket Bywater. So what's going on?
Another issue that Mr. Fraser also pressed Minister Vanterpool on, which again, there were no answers that the minister said he could provide, is that of the assets owned by Bywater/Seven Seas. Because based on what Mr. Fraser said in the House, if it is that Bywater has indeed been sold to Seven Seas, the government has a role to play in this. And if that indeed took place, then the government should know exactly, in addition to the Paraquita Bay plant, what are the other assets that Bywater had that are now in the hands, supposedly, of this new company, Seven Seas.
We don't know what the contracts say directly. We don't know what certain laws of the British Virgin Islands says towards a company being sold or changing name or so. So until we can get those bits of information and those hard facts, it's just a mystery.
Yes, yes. And while we await that information from the government and whosoever else is out there, Bywater, Seven Seas Water, to furnish the public with this information so that this issue can be a mystery no more. Let's turn to another matter which ended up in the news headlines this week, that of BVI Airways' application for U.S. certification being challenged by two regional airlines, both of them operating from right here in the BVI.
Yes, we have Caribbean. Intercaribbean is operating out of Turks and Caicos, but they do transit here, and VI Airlink. And this comes now at a time when persons are beginning to get comfortable that BVI Airways is now just waiting on this last piece of document from the U.S. aviation arm to start the flying. And here we are now with a supposed petition that is being filed by Intercaribbean and the local BVI Airlink. What they are claiming now is that the U.S. body failed to meet a certain criteria, which they were supposed to provide certain information to these two airlines because they are likely to be affected with the impetus of this new airline. And so the big question is now, how much longer do we have to wait for the
BVIA to get up and running to add to the much needed airlift that this country needs and that the Premier has been touting? Until next week, on behalf of Kathy Richards and Peter Gay Coombs, saying check us out on our YouTube page, Facebook page, and our website, jtvlive.net. Bye-bye.